Okay, I'm going to start with the spatial side of things. How many people think they want to try spatial? No, they want to try, not think. Because the amount of hands I see is going to determine how much I make here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I think I'm going to make a double batch for this purpose so that you guys all have enough to taste. So what you guys are going to do for your recipe, it's going to be 2 eggs. A 1/4 cup of milk.
Hi.
Hi, Ellie.
Hey. All right, 2 eggs, 1/4 cup of milk, 1 cup of flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 4 tablespoons of butter. Okay, so keep in mind, I'm going to double this. So again, I've got enough. So what you see me putting in here is not what I've just told you because I'm going to double everything.
Hello. Hi, teacher.
I have to ask my boss if he does it too, because I don't think he does. It sounds like he does it.
So obviously my eggs went in, salt, milk. I went ahead and whisked that before I add the flour just to break up my yolks. And then whisk in your flour. And this should be a little bit thicker than pancake batter. So you can also do like some last minute guesstimation, like it's not thin enough. You can add like a tablespoon more of milk at a time. But you don't want it too thin. So pancake batter is very, very thin. And as I mentioned, our mode of shaping our pasta is going to be putting it through this colander and pushing it through. So if I put my batter in there and it all just goes right through and lickety split, no problem. I'm probably going to have just like a boiling pancake in my pot. And I don't want that. I want these little noodles that come off. So I want something thicker thin pancake batter, but not super thin. So this is still looking, because I'm going to have to push this pasta through, like gravity's going to help, but I'm also going to have to push this pasta through all those little holes. This is still looking a little thick for me to do that successfully. So I'm going to do another tablespoon of milk until I have a consistency.
We made it pancake.
Almost pancake. Halfway.
What? No.
So remember, obviously, when we made pasta, it was a dough. It held its own shape. We made it on the counter. This is obviously a different kind of pasta. It's in a bowl. We want it to be a little bit runnier. This is looking a lot better. So that batter is ready to go when I need it. The other thing that I'm going to focus on doing is getting my boiling water ready to go for me to cook my pasta in. Salted water. Well, I'm putting that out of the way. It's the end of the school year.
Oh, I did.
So keeping my water at a boil is not a big deal. Even if I'm not ready for it, it's better to have this water ready to go. Multitasking, so I'm going to be here working with other things. So it's better to get this done early so that it's ready when you are, instead of sitting here waiting for it to get done. And now everything's ready, but you're just waiting for water. It's kind of silly. So try to think of like multitasking. When this comes to a boil and I'm nowhere near ready to use it, that's okay. I have a lid on it. It's going to start to steam. I can always turn it down a little bit so it's got like a really like rough boil. Keep it for a simmer, I mean, and then it doesn't take much time for it to get back to a boil, but saves me some time. So while I'm working on other things, it can come to a boil. So with the paragraph, I have filled the large pot with salted water. So this is about, I don't know, not quite halfway full. The other reason, you don't have to wait all day for it to come to boil. It doesn't need to be very full to the tip top. It's about halfway, like I said, a little less. And then that salted water, remembering that we're cooking pasta, it's a blank slate or flavor that wants to be added. There's salt in it. We can add salt at the end. This is also something that if you're doing this at home, I've definitely done this with like added mustard, whole grain mustard. It adds like kind of a visual effect, and then it tastes different. Fresh herbs can definitely be added to it. You can definitely flavor this up any way that you want. There's lots of different ways out there. So I salted water, and then in the medium bowl, I mix the flour, eggs, milk together. There's also salt in there. And then I mix well so no lumps remain. Make sure it's a bit thicker than pancake batter. So as you notice, I added a tablespoon and a half or so of extra milk to get it to the consistency I wanted. And then once water has come to a boil, we're going to use the colander to push the batter through the boiling water. And stir as you add the batter to the water. Once the dumplings are floating, strain off the water. Using the same hot pot, add the butter, melt it, add the drained spatzel. We're going to stir well and season to taste. So season with salt and pepper. So I'm going to get the schnitzel part of things going. And before I get too started, I'm going to get my breading procedure ready. So like I said, it's a breaded piece of chicken. So I'm going to need 3/4 of a cup of flour. And you're going to borrow some of these baking pans from me so that you can bread. I like to bread in something that is got some higher sides, not something that's really shallow like a plate. You're going to have a lot of difficulty if you just do with a plate. You're going to make a big mess everywhere. So if you have something that has a little bit of a side to it, you'll see how I bread this. It's going to help you. And then 3/4 of a cup of breadcrumb. And these are seasoned breadcrumbs, so they already have like a really nice aroma. Already smell good. And then you're going to do 1 egg for your egg wash. And that is just an egg and about a tablespoon or so of cold water. And then you just use a fork to mix up egg and water. And then now you have your breading procedure. This order, and it says down here in the paragraph, but I'll get to it, but your order is flour, egg wash, breadcrumb, always, forever, and for true. You want the flour to stick to the wet chicken breast, and then you put it back into something wet, like your egg wash, and then get it back into your breadcrumbs. So then obviously the breadcrumbs stick to the egg. And then I'll show you some tricks along the way how to get that to stick a little bit better. Then you'll notice that your recipe says preheat oven to 350 degrees. So how we're doing this is that when we cook our chicken, so we're going to pan fry our chicken in this fry pan. But what I'm focusing on with that part is just to get the outside nice and caramelized and look really pretty. I'm not really focusing on whether that chicken is done all the way or not. That's what my oven is for. But all different kinds of cooking apparatuses around here, so might as well use them. What tends to happen a lot that I notice is that people will overcook and oversear and pan fry on their fry pan and get burnt on the outside, and the inside just barely cooks. The heat is usually too high, or it's just spending too much time there. But people tend to panic. They're like, well, it looks really pretty on the inside, but it's nowhere near done in the middle. We'll take it off of there and finish it in the oven, because then it'll finish cooking throughout the middle. So we're going to do that. That's one reason, to make sure chicken gets done all the way. The other reason I do it is to hold my chicken while I'm working on other things. So I can sear this, get my chicken seared, and then throw it into my hot oven, and then it finishes cooking, but it also stays hot. So while I'm doing other things, it can just stay hot, and I don't have just chicken sitting on the counter getting cold. Like I mentioned, we've done this meal many, many times at home. And my parents would have like a large electric skillet, and they would do a huge round of chicken, get in a pan, get in the oven. Do another big round of chicken, get in a pan, get in the oven. And we would just have these huge batches of chicken just sitting in the oven, cooking, and then also staying warm, so that by the time we were done, we didn't have a big pile of cold chicken. So another thing you're going to borrow from me is a pan, an oven-proof pan, to go in the oven. So with your chicken, your recipe also says, when working with raw chicken, please be very careful of cross-contamination and wash hands and equipment thoroughly. Seems pretty self-explanatory, but I've seen a lot of mishaps. Just remember, whatever's touching the chicken, you need to be washing that hand. It should just be touching like soapy water. That's the only thing it should be touching. So just keep that in mind. It happens really quickly, because when we go to season it, you go touch the chicken, and then you go touch the salts, and now the whole salt container needs to go away, and the container needs to get washed, because now all the salt's contaminated. So you want to think about those things, what you're touching.
Do you have an egg I can borrow? Because we ran out.
Yeah, you know where they are, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the chicken that you're using, I've already cut the chicken breasts, and I'm going to cut them for you, kind of lengthwise, to get thin chicken. So you want to make sure that your chicken is somewhat evenly thin. You don't have some that are super, super thin and some that are a little bit fatter. They're going to cook at different times. But I just took the chicken and a knife and I cut it. I was able to cut it 3 times to get 3 of these pieces out of 1 chicken breast, which is really nice. It makes the chicken kind of stretch a little longer. The other thing that you could do is, if you were to cut it that way and you still think it's too thick, you can pound it thin. A lot of people use like the back of a saute pan, or you can use just a meat mallet and mash it that way. What I suggest if you were to do that is to use plastic wrap, like get plastic wrap on the bottom and then plastic wrap over the top, and then start pounding it, because then you're not like spitting a bunch of chicken juice everywhere throughout your entire kitchen. But I cut these for you, and they are nice and thin. You shouldn't have to do anything else to them. And then I like to season my chicken. So this is where we think about that cross-contamination. I mean, we should think about it all the time, but this is where I see it a lot, is, like I said, your fingers just end up in the salt container. So this is also a good time to maybe use a partner, somebody in your kitchen group to help you season if you need to. So somebody stays chickeny and somebody does not. So the amount of chicken that you're using is going to be 1 breast piece per person. So whoever's eating, so if you've got 3 people in your group and everybody's eating, you get 3 of the chicken breast pieces. If you've got 3 people but 2 people are eating, think of it that way. But yeah, 1 for every person that's going to be eating, so we don't create waste. So now I'm ready to finally bread. I obviously have my chicken ready to go. It's seasoned. I have my breading procedure ready to go. And then I also have somewhere else for my breaded chicken to land once it's breaded. I've got somewhere for it to go. I don't want to put it back on that plate. I'll put it on this plate. So the other thing I think about with breading, like when I have my chicken, I'm thinking I just want 1 chicken hand. Well, when it comes to breading, because you're going from wet ingredient to dry to wet to dry, you want to have a wet hand and a dry hand. So 1 hand that's always touching all the wet ingredients and 1 that's touching all the dry ingredients. If you're doing this over and over again and breading like hundreds of chicken breasts, or even just 10, you end up breading your fingers. So your fingers just get full of breading and you're kind of wasting breading, but then also it's just kind of a pain to clean your hands, because now your hands are like 20 times the size they need to be. So wet hand into the flour, dry hand, get it out. And then 1 trick to help make the breadcrumbs mixture stay is I shake off as much excess flour as I possibly can. And if you notice, I just do that over the garbage can, hanging onto it, because when I shake this out, I'm obviously going to just shake out flour all over my counter. So I like to just do it over the garbage can. I'm not making a big giant mess. But you see it's just lightly dusted. So I dredged it in there, got it coated, but I shook everything else off of there. And it'll help all that final product. And then you may notice that as I'm breading, I'm shaking the pan. That really helps, which goes into using those high-sided pans and not using just like a dinner plate. Because with a dinner plate, you could get it done, but you're going to have to just do a lot of encouraging to get it up there. It's kind of a pain. And then back to my wet hand. Let any excess egg like that drip off if it's going to. And then once I have breading kind of over the top, I like to just kind of firmly press breadcrumbs down. Doesn't have to be like Hulk smash or anything, but just kind of a firm. And then you don't really have to shake off too much excess there, but a nice evenly breaded chicken breast. There's no holes or gaping things happening. And now I've got 2 breaded chicken breasts. I'm obviously just doing 2, so we all have enough to taste. And then everything that is left over just goes into the trash. All the flour and breadcrumbs have all been contaminated with chicken, so I don't really want them back in the containers, obviously. But I've tried to scale this down that when you are doing 3 or 4 chicken breasts, like the use is pretty much most of what you're doing. If you are for some reason just doing 2 chicken breasts, you could cut it down a little bit. so you don't have as much waste as I do today.
I learned. Good.
Really?
Yeah? I'm noodles. Noodles.
Are you gonna take this?
Where? Yeah.
Well, then you'll be fine.
What?
You'll be fine. You can have some of it. Then you won't be starved to death.
I'll be back.
Never mind, green day too.
Hey,
I'm just like powering through.
you. Hi. Wow. Yeah.
Be gone for the world.
Woo!
All right, water is definitely boiling. I'm gonna turn that down just a tad because I'm not quite ready for it.
Ah! Need water.
There's six. There's seven.
No, I want you.
Also seven in the other room. I can't
I
decide.
need a coffee shop.
No.
Oh,
I'm also keeping
Yeah.
cleaning as I go. I'm always trying to clean as I go. Knowing that I'm gonna eventually need to be straining my pasta out. So when I want to do that, I want at least one side of my sink ready to do that. So I'm not struggling to get cleaned while I'm trying to drain pasta. Oh my gosh. Okay. What?
no.
So with your garlic is going to be a clove or so. You technically want a clove per chicken breast. Or if you're finding small cloves, it'll be 2 cloves per chicken breast. But what's going to happen is we're going to sear it on the pan with a little bit of garlic on the bottom side and a little bit of garlic on the top side. So you want garlic to go over the both. But what I've kind of averaged is if you got a decent sized garlic clove, it's 1. If you got smaller ones, you'll just do 2. It kind of depends on what you're finding in the bucket of garlic. We're gonna pan fry with our chicken breast, and it's gonna have a little bit of garlic on it instead of big giant chunks of garlic. Okay, and then my butter. So butter is going to be 1 tablespoon of butter for every chicken breast you're cooking. Because what we want to do is have half of the tablespoon of butter for each side because we're going to pan fry in the butter. So I'm just doing 2, so I'm going to start out with 1 tablespoon. I also have a non-stick pan, so I'm comfortable just using a fork. You have I think you guys are the only ones with like that coating pan. You can either just borrow mine or just use your metal, your plastic rubber pancake turner spatula thing. So I just have this on like a medium, between a medium and a 4 to get this butter kind of melted and a little foamy. My handle is just a little wobbly and I have a screwdriver. So if any of your handles ever get wobbly, just let me know. I have a screwdriver to tighten that for you. I'd rather do it now before we start losing screws all over the floor. So anyway, I want to be somewhat meticulous on how this butter is melting and where I'm putting my garlic. So what's going to happen, butter's going to melt, it's going to get a little foamy. I'm going to put some garlic down. I'm going to put my chicken down. That's going to brown. So I want to make sure that wherever I'm putting garlic, I'm intentionally going to be putting a chicken breast there. So I tend to put my garlic kind of in a line, imagining that's where I'm going to put my chicken breast. This pan is also quite large. So if I was doing 3 or 4, depending on the sizes, I could probably put 3 or 4 chicken breasts in here. They would definitely fit. So you could just do 1 round and then get it in the oven and then be good to go. So keep that in mind. You can, if you've got a big one, go for it. Put a bunch of chicken in there. Not a bunch, but enough so they're all touching. They have one side touching the bottom. But keep in mind that you want that garlic to be touching the chicken. So if I've got a whole pan full of garlic bits, but there's no chicken on top of it, that garlic is just going to burn and burn and burn and burn. So I want to make sure, like I said, wherever I'm putting garlic, I have intentions of putting chicken. And it's got to be wherever the fat is, that butter is. So if it's not where the butter is, you can always move your pan around and get the butter moving. So because I have melted butter in here, wherever that fat is on my chicken breast, because like I said, what I'm shooting for is something that looks really nice and caramelized and really, really pretty. But if I don't have any fat there, if for some reason it's just like my pan is too big or whatever, you can try to encourage some butter under there. But what you're going to get instead of really pretty kind of caramelized color, it's just going to look like dry toasted breadcrumbs. It doesn't look very pretty. It's just dry. But it's the fat, again, that's in there. So I do have a lot of fat on the sides of the pan. Can you even see the pan anywhere in that camera? Just a tiny bit. But I've got chicken and a bunch of fat that's melted over here. So as it's sitting in here, what I can do as it starts to brown a little bit is move my chicken around to kind of mop up that extra butter that's melted sitting around there. But while this is starting to caramelize, I'm going to take the rest of my garlic and spread it over the other side of my chicken so that when it becomes time to flip, I'm ready to go. It's already got garlic. And I can even put my butter on that side too. So again, when it's ready to flip, I got everything. I've got garlic, I've got butter. So like I said, it's a ½ tablespoon per side. So I'm just dealing with these 2 sides. I'm going to cut it in half and then cut these into smaller pieces and then just kind of strategically place them around. So again, when I flip it, I've got butter throughout the whole surface of that chicken. In a perfect world. And a lot of people ask me, is this ready to flip? Should I flip this now? Really the best way to check is to just check and just kind of peek at the underside, see if it's caramelized, see if it's looking good, and that it's caramelized with butter. If you got a couple dry spots, do something to encourage some more butter on there. Once I flip these and I have my second turn, it's going to go a lot faster because my pan's already warm. This is still kind of trying to get up to a little bit of some heat. But once I flip it, the second side usually goes a little bit faster. I'm at, but like I said, between a medium and a 4. That's looking pretty good. That's what I did last class. So not quite medium, a little hair under. So between a medium and a 4 is where I'm at. The other thing to think about is if you're doing multiple rounds, if you're having to do lots of these, what's going to happen is I just have natural flake off from the breadcrumbs in the pan and then extra butter. So as you continue to do this, that butter that's left in the pan and the breadcrumbs are going to start to burn and get really dark. So what I suggest you do, if you notice that, or if it isn't quite there and you're like, oh, I have to do another round, wipe it out with like a paper towel or something, or scrape it out with a spatula or something, so that your next round isn't going to have a bunch of burnt butter or breadcrumbs on it. So hearing that sizzle is a good sign. I've got caramelizing happening, the garlic nice and caramelized. So we're dealing with two things that can burn really easily, the butter and the garlic. And once they burn, it's burnt, doesn't taste very good. Garlic's going to get super bitter, and butter, it's burnt butter, doesn't taste very good. So you just want to be careful with your heat and your time. Like I said, that last one, once it started to hear it sizzle quite a bit, that was kind of my indicator to know, check it, and it's probably done. So like I said, just keeping that nice color. All I'm really focusing on is getting that really nice color. I'm going to finish it in the oven. If these were the only two that I was doing, and maybe I was already ahead on the spatula or somebody else was helping with spatula, I'd probably just maybe turn this down to a really, really low and finish it here. So if you're doing a smaller batch or something, you could finish it. Again, if your chicken breast was thin and you were confident that it was going to get cooked throughout. But the oven trick is just kind of a, what I call idiot proof. Super, and it's just easy. I can move on to whatever else I'm doing, and then you can just put that oven chicken in there and not have to worry about it and fret if it's done or not. So as you can see, my second side did not take any time at all. Super caramelized, very, very pretty. Exactly what we want to see. And then kind of as I'm picking them up, I'm kind of trying to mop up whatever else is in the bottom of the pan, just because it's tasty and not burnt yet. So I can get it into my pan and enjoy it later. This is just going to naturally cool off until it's ready to go in the sink. There's no need, no rush to get it in the sink and have it like sizzle and smoke and do all those things or steam. Let that just naturally cool off, and then you can wash it. Last class, what I did, because we had that fire drill that I wasn't expecting. So last class, what we did was I got the chicken in there, and my spatula had happened to be down. So what I did, I just turned my oven off. So my oven had already been preheating, and I'm sure my chicken was about like 95% done. So I had my chicken in there, just turned the oven off because all that residual heat will still keep it warm. I didn't open the door, but I just turned it off, and then we went to the fire drill. But that was just kind of another little thing that worked out well. It was already in there, but just turn the heat off, and you don't have to worry about it like overcooking. It's still staying warm. It's kind of acting like a hot box. So I think I'm ready for my spatula. So like I said, I'm going to pour the batter in here and then mush it all around. Once it hits the water, it kind of floats right back up and it's done. But it does take you a little bit of time to mush all of this through. I definitely have nice boiled bubbles up here. And then what I'm going to be doing is holding this up here. So I just want to be very careful that I'm not super duper burning my hands. So I turned my heat down to about a 6. I still have boiling bubbles, which is nice. But as you can see, I have to hold my hand over this pot. So I'm dealing with steam that's coming up. I also don't want to deal with like flames coming up on the side of the pot. That's obviously going to hurt. This is a good thing to do with a partner. So maybe someone's holding the colander, someone else is pushing it through with a spatula. But if it is getting too warm for you, maybe protect your hand with a pot holder or a towel. Just keep in mind that your towel tail isn't too long and like going down to the flame, and obviously you're catching everything on fire. But there are a few options. Turn down your heat. Let somebody help you switch off. And the thickness of your batter obviously will count. Like I said, if it's too thin, it's just going to run right through there. But too thick, it's going to take a little while to push it all through. So all my batter is out of there. But you'll notice that I have a whole bunch on the outside. So I always try to like scrape that off just to get it in there. And then what I'm going to do is immediately go to the sink and rinse this out. It doesn't have to be perfectly rinsed, but I'm going to drain this finished pasta right into there. So I want it somewhat drained so that pasta will go through, water will go through. So the bowl that I use, I want to get that soaking. Like I said, this is like pancake batter, so anything that the batter is on, it's just going to stick to and get cakey and be kind of gross. So I want to soak it so it makes my cleaning job easier. I rinsed out my colander, and just as quick as I rinsed out my colander, everything's floating. Like I said, pretty much as soon as it hits that hot water, it starts to float, and that's your indicator that it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and drain it. And then use that same hot pot. I'm going to add my 4 tablespoons of butter and let that melt. Usually just the heat of the pot, it's just butter we're melting. So the heat of the pot will melt the butter just fine. If you want to turn it on to like a very low to help encourage some of that melting of the butter, you can certainly do that. But once your butter is melted, I would cut the heat and not continue with the heat because you can scorch it and kind of cook it to the bottom of the pot. And then it's just a big cleanup mess. So what you have is actual basil pasta dumplings. So they're kind of irregular shapes. They're perfectly irregular. Should be kind of odd shaped. That's exactly what you want. Okay. So those of you that want to try, let me get this loaded to the dish machine, and then I'm gonna cut up these little pieces of chicken breast, and then you guys can come up. I would suggest like a small little plate, so you can have a little bit of space and a little bit of chicken. But let me run this in the machine quick.
Self-serve.
Take it off. Although you're missing stuff. Good. Is it coming? Yeah. Okay. Just what do you think? Good? Okay, did we get all of the spatzel side done? All the blanks? Are we still missing stuff on the schnitzel?
On the chicken side.
What's that?
On the chicken side.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. The spatzel side is done, the schnitzel side is not, right? Okay, so do we have all the amounts?
Yeah.
So the chicken, the garlic, and the butter are dependent on how many people are eating and there that day. And then with our blanks, so we have make sure chicken pieces are evenly thin. Then I seasoned chicken with salt and pepper. Bread using the standard breading procedure, so it's there for you if you forget. It's flour, egg wash, and breadcrumbs in that order. And then a skillet over a medium heat, so I did between the medium and a 4. We're gonna melt the butter. And we use half a tablespoon of butter for one side of the chicken breast. Once butter is melted and foamy, add garlic to the pan. Place the chicken piece on top of garlic immediately. Let the breaded chicken brown well before flipping, but be careful not to let the butter burn. Turn heat down if needed. Before you flip the chicken, add the remaining half tablespoon of butter and the garlic. Let chicken brown before removing. As the chicken pieces get done, collect them in an oven-proof pan. Continue to cook in oven until cooked throughout.
Waiting after the half day.
Oh, after that.
My leg. I need to ride a bike with my leg. Have Manny with me and my back. So we're walking. For me, was run. For her was bike and run. She's big one. Someone's really in the boyfriend now when I'm our seniors are like a senior I am a listener on helping listeners. One of my greatest passions is I said that it looks good to eat.
You gonna try any? Just saving a piece for, I don't know if Danny wants any, I don't know if Ellie wants any. Where are you? Seriously? We got half days, so no, not next time.
Alright, I'm not gonna be sure this.
The half days?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything to catch up on or any test retakes or? Yeah.